whenever it pops up. Can you?
This is the, thank you. This is the Tuesday, April 4th Landmark Preservation Commission, City of Denver. I will call the meeting to order. The first item of business is introduction of the commission members, and I will start since I'm already talking. My name is Julie Johnson. I'm the Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large. Erica?
I'm Erica Warzel. I'm an architectural historian and preservation consultant, also nominated by the community at large.
I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Nick Fusianis. I'm an architect nominated by the AIA Colorado.
I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect nominated by History Colorado.
I'm Graham Johnson, a preservation project manager nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
All right, thanks, commissioners. The first item on our agenda is the meeting records for approval for March 21st. Commissioners, were there any comments, corrections, concerns already? Can I get a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the meeting record for March 21st, 2023.
Thank you, Graham. And Erica seconded it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nay? Abstain? Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. We are going on to the consent agenda at this point. These are routine design.
Holly, can you change the slide, Jesse, and do audio tests for virtual participants?
That's a great idea. Let's do that. So let's go over a few of the audio tips for virtual participants. One, for better sound quality, we encourage you to download Zoom on your laptop, tablet, or mobile device, and then you can click audio settings to bring up an additional menu. Background noise suppression, because we hear that helps keep the background noise out so you can hear us better. Test your speaker and microphone and adjust their maximum output volume. For presenters or public commenters who are joining us virtually, when it is your turn to speak, to mute or unmute, click on the microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. Expanding the menu next to the microphone will reveal additional options, such as selecting your speaker and microphone devices. Test your microphone and speakers to adjust the maximum output volumes. And if you still have audio challenges, switch to the phone for audio. Sometimes that works. Alrighty, the next thing on our agenda at this point then is public comment. At the beginning of every meeting, before we get going on a design review project, we like to reserve time for public to join us and comment on historic preservation in general in the city of Denver. This is not related to any of the design review projects that are on our agenda today, just historic preservation in general. If you're joining by phone, you can dial *9 on your keypad to raise your hand or email landmark@denvergov.org. Do we have anybody?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
No? All right. Is there anybody here just general public comment? All right. Okay. Then we will move on to our consent agenda. These are routine design items which meet the design and guidelines and are recommended for commission approval without discussion. Any commission member can request that an item on the consent agenda move to the design review agenda if they have questions or concerns. First of all, before we get going, does anybody have to recuse themselves? Anybody involved in any of these projects? I see that Commissioner Johnson, Graham Johnson, needs to recuse himself. So he'll leave the meeting for a moment because we can vote on this.
I have a question
Gary?
about the first item, the one on zone lot amendment at Larimer Street. I'm wondering what the consequences of that zone lot amendment are for the continued preservation of district, because it's essentially combining a number of lots into a single lot, which may be completely benign, but I don't understand if there's any legal issues there that in the long term could affect how Larimer Square is preserved.
It's just combining the lots from 7 lots to 1. they can't do anything to the buildings or touch the buildings or destroy the buildings, and all the lots are within the Larimer Square District, so all the ordinances would still apply. If they tried to touch any of the buildings or change them, those are things that would have to come to you to review and approve. A lot of times it's for a use purpose to combine the zone lot.
Is there potential to change a use there? For example, increasing development potential on undeveloped rights?
It wouldn't change that. And they're like the other side of the block is basically the same size as this lot, so that's why I said there's other similar ones on the block, because this side of the block on Larimer is 7 lots, but the other side's already combined.
Oh, it is.
I think it's already just like, they probably just want the larger lots to have all the ownership combined, is my guess, because it had several applicants.
I mean, I have the same concern about doing this as part of the consent agenda, because the rest of this block is actually all individual lots. So even though the staff report said it's more in keeping with the other size of the properties, it actually isn't, even though we were.
So if you have discussion on it, you should pull it off of
I'd like to pull
consent.
it off. I was gonna pull it off before it's carried. Yeah.
All right, okay, so we're going to pull off 2022-ZLAM-234, discussion during our design review process. Commissioners, any concerns about any of the other consent agenda? All right, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda and approve it as written without the 1422 Larimer Square?
Yeah, I can make the motion to approve the consent agenda items. I'll just name them off.
Excellent.
Okay, 2023-COA-096 at 822 Race Street. 2023-COA-994 at 715 East Fifth Avenue. 2023-COA-95 at 901 Race Street. 2023 TAXC-5 at 3272 Newton Street. And 2022 TAXC-1 at 2640 Curtis Street.
Erica, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Larry has seconded it. So commissioners, let's take a vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstained? All right, then the consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. That'd be great. So we do have one item of public hearing, and that is 2022-L-004. It's an individual landmark designation application for 602 South Erickson Lane, and Abby is our secretary. Oh, all right. First. Sure. Woo! That's too much fun. That's all right. The public hearing process for all of you that are joining us virtually and or in person. The process is I will announce the public hearing process. Commission members announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts of interest. Staff will introduce the application and recommendations, and the commissioners may question the staff. The applicant's presentation, which is limited to 10 minutes, happens after that, and commissioners may question the applicant. Public comment period gives anyone in the public 3 minutes per person to speak. And if you are joining us virtually and would like to speak regarding project, and if you are not part of the applicant team, you can click on the hand raise button for those calling via the phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, or email landmark@denvergov.org prior to the phone period. Then we will ask the staff for any clarifications if they're necessary, and then the commissioners will deliberate, and then the commission will vote. And there we can, at this point, we can begin. Abby, would you like to tell us about this application?
I think you need to open the public hearing.
Open the public hearing.
Are you advancing slides or are you sharing this?
I'm gonna share the screen.
Yes. Okay. So, thank you, everyone. So we're here today to review a proposed designation for 602 South Harrison Lane. So there you have a map showing the location of the property. So the property is located just to the west of Colorado Boulevard and to the south of Cherry Creek. And you can see it's located right on the City of Breast Park. And it is within the Belcaro neighborhood. So it's in Council District 10, I said Belcaro. It is on single family zoning FUF. The owner is Alan Gallen Goss. Yeah, sorry. I'll restart there. The owner is Alan Gallen Gass, and he is also the architect and designer of the building. He is the applicant. The application was prepared in conjunction also with Docomomo and Historic Denver, assisted with the preparation of the application. And this is owner supported. So here's the proposed boundary. So it is basically just following the property line. So immediately around the house there, so you can see that the property immediately abuts the City of Breast Park to the north, and then an adjacent parking lot on the east. So who can apply for designation? Community-driven process need to be done by owner of the property, manager of community planning and development, city council, or 3 residents of Denver. And in this case, this is a owner-supported designation. So it is the owner, Alan Gass, who is bringing this forward. So when we're looking at eligibility, we are looking at whether or not a structure maintains its integrity. It is more than 30 years old or is of exceptional significance, meets at least 3 of 10 criteria, and also that the LPC considers the historic context that is associated with it. So, property today, 602 South Harrison Lane, is being proposed for designation under 3 criteria. Under criterion A, having a direct association with a historical development of Denver. C, embodying the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style, in this case, modernism. And then D, being a significant example of the work of a recognized architect, in this case, Alan Gallen Gass. So, criteria A, direct association with the historical development of the city. So, this is proposed as being significant for its association with the post-World War II residential development of Denver. Constructed in 1961, the house is located adjacent to the Greenbauer subdivision, which was established in 1955, on land that was formerly part of the Greenbauer's nursery and immediately adjacent to city landfill, which is now City of Breast Park. So it's associated with the rapid growth of Denver in the mid-20th century and the expansion of residential development into new areas. So it really shows the expansion of development with new development pressures at mid-century into areas that were previously used for agricultural uses, such as dairies and nurseries and greenhouses. So a lot of those agricultural areas became residential developments in the post-war period. And it also shows the push into areas, undesirable, like the city landfill that used to be located along Cherry Creek. So you can see here is a map from 1942, kind of showing that gap in there where there wasn't, kind of large amount of empty space along Cherry Creek, where used either for, just polo grounds are used as a city dump at that point. That has now, since then redeveloped in the mid-century period. The Greenbauer's subdivision offered its initial 30 building sites for sale in the summer of 1955. The new subdivision was advertised for its proximity to the new Cherry Creek Shopping Center. So the open air mall in Cherry Creek opened in 1955, reclaimed from the former town dump. Additional sites on the east side of South Harrison Lane were offered later. That 602 South Harrison is one of those sites. The location of 602 South Harrison was less desirable due to its location immediately adjacent to the landfill and for easements that reduced the buildable area, but this also made it an attractive site for a young architect establishing his own practice and up for a challenge of using this kind of challenging lot. The Allen Gullen Gas House is also representative of a collection of architects experimenting with housing and innovation and promoting new types of residential development in Denver post-war. Architects and designers have been experimenting with ideas for housing during the previous decades, but were unable to realize their visions until after the Great Depression and World War II. These architects helped shape development in post-war Denver, including through the design of their own homes, such as 602 South Harrison. The unusual form and siting of 602 South Harrison received a lot of public attention as it was being constructed. The house was the subject of a Denver Post article in 1961 titled, "Denver Architect Builds Home with Many Unusual Features." And according to the article, the home was an attention catcher in Southeast Denver, with few new homes generating more comment and curiosity than the new structure being built by Denver architect Allen Gullen Gas. Denver Post followed up with another article, which was titled "Denver Home Dome Stops Traffic," and gave a very detailed account of the design of the house and its significant features. The house remained a prominent example of contemporary housing during the 1960s. It was featured in a home tour along with the homes of Victor Hornbein and Eugene Sternberg. In 1963, it was also featured on an AIA tour designed to demonstrate the advantages of hiring a licensed architect for designing residential architecture in 1968, and was featured in a Denver Post article also in 1968, "Excellent Architecture Begins at Home," which featured homes loaded with ingenious features built by architects for themselves. That's Allen Gullen. The Allen Gullen Gas House reflects mid-20th century residential development patterns in Denver, both through the expansion of housing into new areas of the city in response to the city's rapid population growth, as well as in new trends in residential design reflected in the works of progressive architects such as Gas. So then Criterion C embodies the distinctive visible characteristics of an architectural style or type. So 602 South Harrison is representative of the evolution of modern architecture in Denver after World War II. Modernism really kind of evolved in the post-war period, moving away from the starkness of the international styles into more varied interpretations of modernism, including contemporary, formalist, and expressionist styles. And this house really reflects that kind of evolution, kind of broadening of what modernism is and further exploration of residential housing at mid-century. Also, the incorporation of solar design and efficiency into designs too, particularly with the dome, as well as with the full-level design built into the earth to also improve efficiency. Some of the character-defining features of the house include the dramatic roof form with a domed skylight and deep overhanging eaves, the large decks with broad expanses of glass to provide indoor-outdoor connections, a really key feature of mid-century residential design, an open plan and flexible interior with a bi-level floor plan, combination of concrete, brick, and wood. Particularly here, the inclusion of brick is really key for Denver, whereas in other parts of the country, modernism was generally, associated with stark white, often stucco. In Denver, we really saw that brick continued to be incorporated into modern designs as being a really key material for the Denver. Yeah. Denver's visual character. The house is also symmetrical and geometric in its design elements and has an angled dot orientation. These are all representative of the evolution of modern architecture in the mid-20th century. So the house is square in plan, the domed roof skylight, which was inspired by the Roman Pantheon. Acrylic dome skylights were a new architectural product at this time. The exterior walls are brick and sit on a visible concrete foundation. Void of ornamentation, the placement of windows and glazing add dimension and depth to the building facade. The house opened up to outdoor decks with fully glazing and sliding glass doors. The symmetrical central plan was inspired by Palladio's Villa Capra, a nod to classical architecture, informing the design of the modern residence. While the house is unique and does not fit clearly into a category of modernism, it clearly reflects the evolution of modern design in the mid-20th century, as well as more specifically, the evolution of housing. At mid-century, modern architects were utilizing new technologies, materials, and mass production methods to meet the demand for affordable and fast construction. Design was used to promote a more informal and casual lifestyle. Mid-century design elements included floor plans laid out to maximize space and flexibility. Floor plans, fenestration, and landscaping designed to create connections between indoor and outdoor spaces, and facades featuring large windows, and decorative elements replaced with contrasting wall materials and textures. The ability of the guest house to represent mid-century trends is also evident in the descriptions that were included of his work in the Denver Post at the time it was completed. So finally then, also criterion D as being a significant example of the work of a recognized architect or master builder. So the Gass House is significant as an example of the work of Allen Gass, who made substantial contributions to the fields of architecture and urban planning in Colorado. Through his long career, he was a prominent member of Denver's architectural community, working both independently and collaboratively with other architects and contributing his expertise to a variety of planning, arts, and civic organizations. Born in Denver, he graduated from Harvard Graduate School of Design in '56. His early career worked for I.M. Pei, Fisher and Davis, and James Sudler. Established his own firm with Robert Brewster Gay in 1961. After that firm ended in the late 60s, went on to work with several other prominent architecture firms, established the AIA Denver Urban Design Committee, and contributed to a lot of civic and planning and arts organizations in Denver, including the Denver Art Commission, Citizens Advisory Committee to the Denver Regional County Governments, the Baba Yara Foundation, IMC Zoning and Planning, and the Denver Architectural Foundation. And he was recognized as a member of the AIA College of Fellows in 1998. So, this is a key example of the representation of Allen Gass's career. It was built in 1961, is really a prime example of his work, particularly in the beginning of his career as he was an emerging architect, established his design philosophy, and also the emphasis on environmental design that would continue throughout his career. Gass would go on to incorporate active and passive color technology in future designs. The bi-level design Gass incorporated in his house would also be seen in other residential works of his. Sinking the bottom level into the ground was designed to help with heating and cooling costs by limiting the amount of exposed wall surface. The association of this designed home as Gass's personal residence, where he lived during most of his career achievements, is also significant. As a prime example of Allen's work as an emerging architect, this house embodies a distinctive period in his career and remains a prominent representation of his residential design. So integrity. The house is really minimally altered. It has been continuously used as Allen Gass's residence. The only significant alteration has been the replacement of the original shingled roof with a metal roof. The metal roof was intended to be the original roofing material, but at the time of construction, it was swapped out for shingles due to cost. So when the roof was replaced then and it was possible to put on the originally intended metal roofing, a metal roofing was used. But that is really the only real alteration to this design. So the historic context. So this house is associated with a post-war residential development in Denver. So really associated with that post-war residential population boom, the development of new areas of Denver for housing, new residential types being developed, and the evolution of modern design. The period of significance is being proposed as 1961 to 1993. So this is both representing the construction, this is like initial construction and design of the house, and then is being carried forward to represent Gass's continued association with the house, since this was his house and is where he continued to live throughout his career, continues to live today, and so that it has that strong association with his career and his work. It is being ended at 1993 due to the 30-year guidance provided as a landmark ordinance. So the landmark ordinance says that a property should either be at least 30 years old or having exceptional significance. In this case, it was determined that it would just be best to leave the period of significance at 1993, which incorporates the majority of Gass's career, but it wasn't seen that it had the ability to be exceptionally significant for an extended period of significance. We did receive one letter of public comment in support. It stated that the significance of Alan Gass as an architect and his mid-century modern residence, complete with full documentation explaining the technical reasons, makes this an excellent candidate for landmark status. This residence and Alan's contributions to Denver helped give this city soul. Alan Gass also shared with me his Facebook page where he had posted about the proposed designation, and it had over 100 positive comments of people very excited about the designation, including this one, just it qualifies to meet all criteria, represents a unique architectural style, is associated with historical persons or events, and is the work of a master architect. So, the landmark designation review criteria. So, over 30 years of age, the application meets at least 3 criteria. So, in this case, A, for direct association with historical development of the city. C, for embodying the distinctive physical characteristics of its architectural style. And D, being the significant example of a work of a recognized architect. Integrity is also part of your consideration, as well as considering the historic context which this property is associated with. And landmark staff would recommend approval, and there is a suggested motion.
Abby, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Abby? All right, thank you very much. Is the applicant present? Hi.
Well,
Would you like to go? So, sir, you have 10 minutes to talk about your application, and please begin with your name and your address.
my name is Alan Golding Gaines, 602 South Harrison Lane. Okay. I really have not much to say to add to what you said already, but a little bit of history. I had no idea that my house was capable of being a landmark. And it was only until I began my association with Tacalomo, Tacalomo suggested that perhaps it could be done. And I'm familiar with the process. I've worked on a number of landmark buildings in New York City primarily, and was one of the people at the landmark who got National Register status for Temple Manual, which is on the page. So I know the process pretty well. I told them that they did the hard work. I think if they want to landmark, the two gentlemen who are here, who are primarily responsible. So I'll let them speak.
I'm Michael Flowers. I work for Historic Denver, and we office at 1420 Ogden Street. I'm presenting an applicant because I prepared the designation, and I wrote a majority of it with assistance from Alan, as well as Docomomo. And Historic Denver fully supports this landmark designation, of course. Alan Gatz made a profound impact on Denver in the field of architecture and a career spanning nearly 7 decades. Alan has worked on numerous projects here in Denver and helped shape the built environment of our city. He worked in the field of urban planning and in service on numerous boards and committees has helped to create policy, which has impacted the development of our city as well. He has contributed significantly to the field of passive and active solar technology. I did want to mention that at the time that it was constructed, the Front Range Community College was one of the largest active solar projects at the time, and Alan was really responsible for doing the research and implementing that design. He was also instrumental in getting the establishment of Bobby Yard Memorial Park, and was, I think, primarily responsible for bringing Lawrence Halpern and Sephora Nishida. So we have his thanks for that marvelous park and cultural landscape. Alan is one of Denver's significant architects, and this designation is a chance for us to honor his legacy and ensure the stunning example of modernism is protected and continues to enrich our city for years to come. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are you part of that?
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just make my comment now.
Okay.
So I'm Adam Stevens. I'm a Denver resident at 2580 South Meade Street in Harvey Park. I'm a real estate broker as well as a charter member and the board secretary of the Colorado chapter of Docomomo US, an organization devoted to the documentation and conservation of modern architecture in Colorado and the United States. I am expressing support for the landmark application for 602 South Harrison Lane, both as a Denver resident and on behalf of Docomomo US Colorado. This landmarking for a building that is important not only for being a fine and unique work of modern architecture with high historic integrity, but more so to reflect the importance of Alan Gatz, the architect who designed it and has made it his home since 1961. The builder, Clyde Mannon, as well, whose career included the construction of Inglewood's Arapahoe Acres and Littleton's Arapahoe Hills, both of which are notable works of modern architecture and are listed on the National Register of Historic Places. I was first introduced to Alan during one of his idiosyncratic tours of downtown Denver during Doors Open Denver many years ago, and I discovered his deep knowledge of Denver's architectural fabric, or not just from passive study of Denver per se, but from working many years as an architect in Denver. He knew many of the 20th century designers of today's Denver personally, having worked with or for them, and he even worked for Ian Pei, an architect of national importance who has several notable modern works in Colorado. While Alan may not be one of Denver's local starchitects per se, it is not for lack of talent or influence. It's because he is as humble as he is serious about good modern design. Alan is our living connection to Denver's 20th century architectural history, and even today, as an active member of Docomomo US Colorado, he helps us interpret Colorado's modern architectural works and the people behind them. If we could landmark Alan himself, we certainly would, but the next best thing is to landmark one of his intimate architectural works, his own home. Thank you, and we hope you'll approve and forward the landmark designation for the Alan Golan Gatz House.
Thank you very much, sir. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? No? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Val, did you have anything else that you wanted to add before we go into deliberation?
I still need to do public comment.
Yes, you're correct. Is there anyone in the virtual world that would like to make a public comment? And you would be given 3 minutes to do so.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, please give us your name and your address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Asma Hassan. I live at 601 South Harrison Lane, across the street from Mr. Gass. May I go ahead? All right, I guess I should go ahead. Sorry, did someone say something?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, so, Mr. Gass and I are friends. I respect him. I hope we continue to be friends. I do have several concerns. The biggest one being that the way the house is constructed with the deck on the second floor, we are seeing a lot of homeless, sleeping under that deck. It's effectively a shelter for the homeless. I see blankets and clothing there. We have a significant homeless problem in Denver that's going to just continue. If someone's unable to make changes to the exterior of this building, that would continue to be a problem. The park that the house is on does have a homeless problem. The city is trying its best, I'm sure, as you know, but it is overwhelming. It's an overwhelming problem. So, and I've spoken to Mr. Gass about this. He doesn't feel that there is a problem when clearly there is. I have compassion for the homeless, like we all do. However, the homeless that are here, they're aggressive, they're difficult, there's probably mental health problems, there's drug use and syringes. My concern is that if no one is able to change this house in any, the exterior, that problem will just continue. Mr. Gass is advanced in age, and this is a morbid thought, but unfortunately, eventually someday he will pass. The house will probably be vacant for some time. Even now, with Mr. Gass living in it, there's a significant homeless problem. There's many young children in the neighborhood, including my own, and it's a real security concern and problem. Mr. Gass himself had a break-in at his house. In addition, I would like to point out that I do not believe any of the criteria, the 30 years of age has been met, but I question that there was a significant historical event associated. It's well known that there was a population boom, et cetera. That's not an uncommon thing. It's not necessarily a significant historical event. Every home being built catches attention. I don't think this is representative of the modernist architectural style. In fact, the staff presenter herself said that it doesn't fit into a category of modernism. I also question the integrity of the building. It's not clear from the photos, but if you look, that aspects of the home do look unstable. And the biggest concern being the deck creates a shelter for the homeless. My home is actually older and embodies the style of the time better, in my opinion. And as the Documomo person said, he's not a starchitect.
Sorry. Do we have another public comment?
Yeah.
All right. Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
If you could,
Yes.
we'll give you,
Okay,
you've
so
got 3 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Give us your name.
My name is Allison Jockle, and I too am a neighbor of Alan Gass, and we are friendly. He takes care of our property. We try to take care of his as much as possible. I have similar concerns to Ozma as well. There has been a large influx of homeless people walking by, and there's been more than one occasion that myself or my husband has had to chase someone off of Mr. Gass's property. Specifically, there was a time actually the police were called because there was a man walking around his property. And like Ozma said, as morbid as it is, he will eventually pass, and his daughter isn't local necessarily. And so being able to change that property and provide some security, or not being able to if it's landmark, is a concern. I also have young children, which is a concern. And like I said, just the other day, there was somebody who walked right across his property, no concerns whatsoever. And the deck in itself, the integrity of it, I question as well. It does look a little dilapidated. It does look like it's falling apart. And while in the case in the 60s, it might have been aesthetically pleasing, it is no longer aesthetically pleasing. And the remarks were that the architect was unusual and not necessarily unique or appropriate to the time period.
Okay, could you please give us your address as well?
610 South Harrison Lane.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, do we have anybody else like to make a public comment?
I do not see any other hands raised.
All right. All right, is there anyone here in person that would like to comment?
Oh,
No? No?
sorry, I thought it was another one, but it's the same person again.
No, you're okay. Thank you very much. And
There is one person coming.
I know.
Would you like to comment? Your chance.
Would you like to make a public comment on this project? Okay. Yes, I would like that.
Give your name and address.
Yeah, if you could stand there, please, give us your name and address. I'm Kimber Jonesy. I live at 877 East Panama Drive. I'm in Littleton. But I helped with. Oh, you're fine. I also helped on behalf of Docomomo in originally wanting to do the submittal for this landmark application. And we've been working on it for a long time, and I feel that Alan deserves this for his house, being that he was such a contributor to our city and worked with so many of our prominent architecture firms. And not to mention, it's such a good example of the architecture that was built at the time and a higher level of thinking that came from that era. And use of land that was maybe not something that everybody had originally wanted, but now it's such a desirable piece of land, and the home has stood the test of time and has been his residence for so long that I feel that it truly deserves to be a landmark and represent that time period and represent everything that Alan has done for our community and working with the architects of that time. Thank you. Celeste, is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment on landmark designation project?
See one hand raised. but I
Anybody
think
else?
it's the
No,
same
there's
person.
no hand, and there's nobody here in person that would like to. Then,
The same person.
okay, then I close the public hearing. I will close the public hearing now. And, commissioners should go into deliberation. Commissioners, did you have any other questions for the staff or you?
I do. I noticed an absence of interior photos in the staff report. Is there any reasoning behind that?
Basically, we don't really evaluate interiors. We don't have any purview over interiors. The only time that Landmark reviews interiors is if we're dealing with tax credit applications. Otherwise, we don't look. So it's not something we really consider in our designation, since anyone could change the interior at any time.
And is condition of the exterior component of analysis?
Right. I realize I should probably clarify that. When we talk about integrity, we're talking about the original design. So like, can you still see the original design? So the condition really doesn't come into it. Whether or not a house is considered, deteriorated or shows signs of weathering or age, those are not considered to be anything against the integrity. Integrity is really referring to, is the original design intent clear, or, is it, still have its original form, in some cases, original materials, original. So it's really talking about the integrity of the design intent. It's not, something could be, in poor condition, but still have excellent integrity.
Historic integrity versus structural integrity.
Exactly. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah.
And the 7 aspects of integrity adopted by our ordinance.
Yeah, so it's feeling, setting, workmanship, design, materials.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Abby. Any other questions for staff, for commissioners? All right, then commissioners, let's go into deliberation. What are you thinking about this application? And does it meet the criteria?
I'll jump in. I think it clearly meets all 3 criteria that has been established in the application. I would like to kind of direct comments to the public commenters. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. As far as criterion A and association with a historical event or development, that can get a little wonky because it's not so much, it doesn't necessarily have to be one event. And yes, clearly there are many areas and properties associated with Denver developing and growing over time. However, I think the way the application has provided the context of this house being built on previously agricultural property, along where kind of originally a dump, then becoming a park, all of that kind of establishes how this area of Denver was becoming a residential area that this house was directly associated with. Is it the only house associated with that? No, but that's why we also have these other criteria that we're considering for designation for this building. So I think in that sense, it clearly meets criterion A. I will also say, in regards to style, I actually really enjoyed the quote from Mr. Gass about kind of refusing to pigeonhole this house into one style. As an architectural historian, I often want to pull my hair out when I'm forced to make a check next to a certain style because it doesn't always, so rarely fit so cleanly into one style. And I think this house is a perfect example of that, of definitely embodying modern movement principles, but taking inspiration from many different places and making it its own unique design. So it's, yes, there are other modernist buildings around, but I think this clearly shows those modern movement principles and kind of amalgamation of style. I think, oh, and also I would just like to make a comment that I appreciate the concern about security and whether changes to the building would hamper addressing some of those concerns in the future. This body commission sees requests to make changes that I think we've seen many different examples of changes that can occur that still respect the historic character of a landmarked property. And I don't think that having a designation on this building would preclude some future work being done if necessary. Last comment that I'll make is that I really enjoyed the designation application. I think it gave a great amount of context, not only about Denver and neighborhood development, but also Mr. Gass's career. I loved seeing how it kind of, his career overlapped or intersected with so many well-known Denver modernist architects. So I think I'm in full support of this application.
Eric, thank you. Other comments, commissioners?
I think with regards to the style question as well, I think this is actually a really good example of the kind of turn in the 1960s toward a bit more experimental approaches to modernism, and I really appreciated the explanations of that in the application.
Okay, great. Other comments, Gary?
I thank Eric because it's such a good job.
I know. I got nothing after. Any other commissioners have any other comments?
Gary and I live in lots of mid-century buildings all the time, even not this monumental, so it's always great to see them protected.
Yeah, absolutely. Would anyone like to make the motion? I can. Thank you, Erica.
Pull up the motion so I have it right in front of me and say it correctly. Okay. I move to recommend approval and forward to City Council the landmark designation of the Alan Gollin Gas House at 602 South Harrison Lane, application number 2023L 4, based on the landmark ordinance criteria A, C, and D, citing as findings of fact for this recommendation, the application form, public testimony, and the March 28th staff report.
Erica, thank you. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Gary has seconded that. Let's take a vote, commissioners. All in favor, aye? Opposed? Nay? Abstained? All right, it passes unanimously and will be sent to the city council. Congratulations. Thank you for your
Thank you.
application for our. Thank you. All right, so you do have a slide for design review process. All right. The chair will announce the design review items on the agenda. Commission members announce any ex parte contacts or conflicts. Staff will introduce the application and recommendation. Commissioners may question staff. The applicant's presentation is limited to 10 minutes. Commissioners may question the applicant if we have questions. Public comments are allowed, and they are 2 minutes per person. If you would like to speak regarding a specific project and not part of that applicant team, please click the hand raise button. For those calling via phone, dial *9 to raise your hand, or email landmark prior to the public comment period. Staff clarification is necessary, commission deliberation, and commission motion and vote. So I do have a question for staff, actually, since the Larimer Square was taken off of the design, or off of the consent agenda. Should we do that one first? Yeah. Okay. Graham, just so you know, you recused yourself during the consent agenda, and we decided to take off 1422 Larimer. Are you able to join us with that?
Yeah, I guess I'll say for the record, we're working with the owners on other buildings, but I have had no involvement or association or any previous familiarity with this particular part of it. So
Okay.
I think I'm in the clear there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then we will begin. Oh, sorry.
When will my computer just clicked out, decided to shut down PowerPoint?
Well, of course it did.
Give me 1 second. to get back out.
Yes.
Allowing me to put this presentation mode.
Are you sharing your screen?
I think it's because it's in recovery mode right now, and you have to fully open it to see. Let me stop sharing the screen real quick and try this again. Share. Oh.
Very much. Okay, all right, we are ready to begin. The project that was taken off the consent agenda is 2022-ZLAM at 1423 Larimer Street in Larimer Square. And Crystal is our staff person.
Okay, so this application is to combine 7 zone lots at Larimer Square into 1 zone lot. No changes are proposed to the buildings with this application. It's a zone lot amendment only. So on the left, you can see the 7 zone lots. on that left side of the block that are being combined. The other side is mostly already been combined. I believe there's only one lot in the center that hasn't. And I was looking at our method program. According to our ordinance and dealing with the zone lot amendment in the district for preservation, the commission shall determine whether the amendment adversely affects the character or integrity of the neighborhood or any contributing structure in the neighborhood. So when reviewing against that criteria, staff found that the zone lot amendment does not adversely affect the character or the integrity of the neighborhood. Additionally, there is obviously reviewed application for changes to Larimer Square. That was a separate application. So it looks like the design team has submitted this application to develop undevelopable gross floor area for the use in the project that you have already done. So this just gives them that additional square footage to do those additions. But that is a separate application. That does not work in tandem with the zone. The zone lot is separate and only for combining lots or splitting lots. So any changes to the site or the structures would have to come to you again if it wasn't something you've already done.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
So the application that we already approved, does it require this zone lot
It
modification?
may. I didn't review that application. Abby did. But if you don't approve this, then they might not be able to get enough gross floor area from what I can see from their notes from their site development plan. But again, that's a separate application. That is not your zone lot.
I'm sorry, I'm confused about the application that we're talking about.
Right, we're talking about only combining lots.
No, the one to which, was this the one where it was an entrance issue?
Well,
It was an entrance issue. I'm talking about the one that we're, yes.
yes, it
It
was,
was
it was an entrance issue, but it also included modifications to buildings that added square footage by, I think, popping the top in one case and extending the back
Right.
of another building, by changing parts of the building that at the time in that application were not considered detrimental to changing the character of the building.
If, I did have one other question. In the future, if additional design review were to come to us, it would still be by building rather than by one zone lot.
It depends what they're doing.
Sure.
So like, we look at them obviously mostly as individuals that we're talking about them. But if there was like a number of changes to all the buildings on the zone lot or one study environment or add on top of stuff. Right, basically anything.
My question is, when the lots were combined across the street, what year was that? In other words, how recent is this trend to turning them into massive zone lots?
I'm not sure. I was just looking at the existing lots as they are today. And additionally, we don't, as a city, we don't actually have zone lots mapped anywhere. Truly, we don't. They are parcels here, and then they become zone lots when parcels are combined.
So there's an ownership parcel, which is mapped. Zone lots is the buildable lot. That is not mapped anywhere in the city of Denver. So the buildable footprint in the city of Denver is not mapped. But a lot of times you have to now combine your buildable footprint to match your ownership footprint, especially in these really commercial areas. Like we do these all the time in lower downtown, essentially, where you see all of those big developments. They're essentially all one zone lot now.
So I guess that brings up another question.
Sure.
Are you implying then that can't develop across multiple zone lots. You have to have it be one zone lot to do comprehensive development within that.
Typically, yes.
Okay.
So, coming in, what are the consequences to not combining, to just leaving the status quo where it is in 7 months? What specifically does that mean?
I mean, for us, looking at the exterior of the sites and structures, I don't think there really is one. They're clearly trying to get this additional gross floor area that they can use to build additions or changes over the whole site. And because I'm guessing that they're trying to combine it into one developable area, that's why they're doing this, to get that additional. But for what we review any changes to anything in the district on the site or structure. So combining the zone lots to us doesn't really do anything here because they don't have like a vacant developable lot that's gonna allow taller, bigger, like ordinance already kind of.
It has implications for their parking and SUDP. So a lot of other city agencies, as Crystal said, because there's no vacant lot here to develop, but it could have implications in the site development plan review process.
So the materials that were submitted are just the plans. There was no narrative.
There is a separate site development plan application, like I said, that has the additions and changes that you reviewed with Abby. But that is a separate application from this. So a lot of amendments are just combining or splitting lots.
Should we hear from the applicant and maybe ask them questions?
Yeah. Yeah, the other issue is I think they might have jumped off because they were on consent, but Taylor can check.
I don't see any of their names popping up in the chat. If the applicant is present, if you could raise your hand.
Is the applicant present? I mean, we clearly took it off consent. I mean, if they were on, they would have heard that it had come off.
Okay.
So you do have to take some kind of action on this today. That could be to continue to a date certain, because you don't feel that you have enough information from the applicant.
Or should we simply deny it? So, what would staff recommend?
I wouldn't recommend
what
the
do legal
denial,
recommend?
because they can't come back with
Hi,
the
Dave.
same situation.
Hello. Maybe Sarah with the city attorney's office. You can do, you can take either path, right? Now would mean they'd have to come back, start with a new application. The continuance, obviously, it sounds like the commission needs more information, so that's perfect, appropriate reason to go ahead and move to continue this matter to a date certain. And then obviously the applicant would bear for the desire to do that next.
Okay.
So,
Okay, it sounds like a continuation is probably our best path forward.
that sounds appropriate to me, but it's your prerogative.
Expressed the concern that I'm feeling. And some of this is coming from kind of expressed concern from a number of different venues. Since that original application last year, maybe it was longer than that ago, that the concern that I have is that over time, the incremental change to Larimer Square could change its character to something that's unrecognizable from what was landmarked in the first place. And that's a problem with any change to a building, that over time, it's like, you know, my grandfather's 100-year-old axe that had the head changed 3 times and the handle 4 times. I mean, sooner or later, the item that was landmarked does not resemble what's there now close enough. And it's done not all at once, but incrementally. And there's a concern with how my concern is how the ownership of, the new ownership of Larimer Square has in their previous application and in this application without more kind of narrative of what their long-term plan is, I'm just suspicious about what changes are coming down the road that could affect the character of Larimer Square from what we preserved initially with the initial designation. And I know any changes have to go through design review. But, you know, how does design review over several years by different commissions kind of lose track of what was preserved in the first place and whether or not the changes along the way kept enough of the original, the integrity of the original structures. This is a special case.
This is, yeah.
I mean, it's a special case. And so I just feel there's a need to be much more careful about what we do. I think we may have been a little less than as careful as we needed to be the first time because the application came in a way that all the folks that have interest in the preservation of Larimer Square didn't have enough opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, let's talk about this a little bit more. And that's why I'd like to see a slowdown. So a continuation would be, I think, in this case, appropriate.
So you support a continuation rather than a denial? Okay. Staff, what about a date certain? Choosing a date certain, how do we do that?
May 2nd would be the first available meeting.
Right.
Well,
And could I just also
hold on, let me look at the calendar.
Okay.
They could do April 18th or May 2nd. Technically, we normally do things in line with our filing deadline, but we are open on the 18th as well. And I don't think they're going to be.
And, yeah, and
I mean, we also need a great deal more information. My problem with this is I had no idea what we were actually voting for. And there, you know, Denver, and I agree with Gary, there are a lot of things that are changing. And the idea of taking these 7 individual, very individual lots and turning them into one, I have no idea what that means. And I feel worried that the commission is sort of the last line in something that could happen in 5 years and we don't understand what the implications are. So one of my suggestions would be to make a much fuller brief or application from the owner to explain exactly what are the implications of this down the line.
The owner just
Oh,
joined
the owner's
the
there,
applicant, so maybe you can.
oh, okay,
Okay,
great.
great.
Email them at present. Okay, Crystal, thank you. I appreciate that. Hello? Who's the applicant?
Hi there.
Hello? Hi. I'm glad you were able to join us. You have 10 minutes to talk about this request or this project. And please give us your name and address at the beginning of it. And get the timer up here for you. There we go.
Sure. My name is Justin Gross. My address is 2315 Oneida Street. I'm sorry, I just jumped on. I think we were under the assumption we were part of the consent agenda up front, and so I haven't been on the call to hear the sort of the latest deliberation and questions about this project. I think that there, if I'm not mistaken, there may be some questions about the sort of the nature of why we are proposing the zone lot amendment here. Is that correct? Can I ask that question?
Yeah, I would say that's correct.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of that information to share. The ownership of this side of the block has requested that we pursue this, but unfortunately, I don't have a lot to share in the way of what the ultimate intent is here. I think when I heard in the beginning of the meeting as the consent agenda portion, that I'd agree with whatever the individual said, that we're not proposing any like design changes here. This isn't sort of an architectural request, but as far as the zone lot amendments go, I don't know that I have a lot of information to offer at the moment, other than this has been a request from ownership that we sort of try to merge these all into one.
Okay, thank you, sir. Hang on a second. Let's see if the commissioners have questions for you. Commissioners?
It sounds to me, from what you just stated, that the ownership has ideas about future development on this set of individual zone lots. I think that's a question. Is that kind of what you're implying? That there are plans or ideas about future changes to the site that may require the consolidation of the individual zone lots to make those ideas possible?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth about the ownership's intent with this. So I'd like to probably leave it at that if I could.
Sure. Commissioner, other questions?
I guess, yeah. Before you jumped on, I think there were some questions about whether this was related to the application that we've already, like the achievability of the application that we've already reviewed. Are those connected in any way, or would you be able to pursue the development per what this commission has already approved without this zone lot amendment?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the sort of architectural review that has already happened for portions of the block that you guys have seen probably a few months ago at this point is separate from this. I don't believe there's any correlation, but again, I'm not entirely sure what the intent of the merger of these zone lots are.
Thank you. Anybody else for questions? All right, Justin, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. All right, commissioners, we have a couple of thoughts, a couple of things we could do here. We can deny, we can continue. Gary, what's your preference?
Well, in the past, on other projects where a project we were reviewing required a zone lot modification, they happened together.
Right.
Or the zone lot modification happened after we approved the design. I think I prefer that in this case as well, because it appears that there is something planned or thought about. It may not have a line on paper, but there are ideas about changing Larimer Square. And I think I'd like to see, okay, what changes are proposed before we change the zone lot configuration. That's my perspective.
So to me, that sounds like at this point you're leaning toward it.
I think yeah.
So those changes may be interior related, and the commission does not have purview over the interior. So you have to consider that the zone lot amendment has implications on how the buildings are used and how they are connected internally, which the commission does not have purview over.
Well, wouldn't that be part of the explanation about why the zone lot application is being made? I mean, if they want to combine two interiors that are in separate zone lots and they can't do it, because they're on separate zone lots. I think that in an application sense, that's, even though we don't have purview over what they do to the interiors, the fact that they're doing something to the interiors and requires a zone lot application, I think is something that would justify this, wouldn't it?
It seems to me that we should make a motion to continue it to either the next meeting or the May 2nd meeting, with an understanding that in order for us, for a number of commissioners to feel comfortable discussing this through, additional information would be either presented, by an applicant testifying to us or what have you. But I don't feel like, I think that's where we are.
A continuation, so you're recommending a continuation is where you'd like to go?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, several examples downtown where multiple buildings that were previously individual addresses, individual blocks and lots were combined either through development or preservation efforts. The market center, there's again several, and so I think these are fair questions. But I agree with the continuation, maybe just for that clarification. It's just simply a dotting I and crossing a T, or is there a question to be answered? I think that's a fair continuation. I would agree as well.
Okay, so then Brittany, do you recommend the 18th or the 2nd?
I would recommend asking the applicant, what
The applicant's still with us?
can you move Justin? Sorry.
Justin, are you still with us? Hi. Hi, Justin.
Hi there.
Should we continue? Yeah, so you've probably heard us, we're deliberating, we're talking about continuing this and bringing it back for discussion. Would you prefer both spots are available April 18 or May 2nd?
I think we would prefer the 18th if possible.
So just a note, you need to provide any extra information to Crystal as soon as possible, because the staff report for that is due next Tuesday. So by the end of this week.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay, Justin. Yeah. Justin, thank you for joining us again. We appreciate it. All right, then commissioners, do I hear a motion for continuation and reconsideration on the 18th?
Madam Chair, I move to continue application number 2022-ZLAM-234 for 1423 Larimer Street to the April 18th, 2023.
Erica, thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Larry, thank you for seconding. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained? All right, we will revisit this on April 18th. Brittany, thanks for your help on that. Nate, thank you. All right, we are moving on now to 2023-COA-092 at 3044 Champa Street in Curtis Park. And this is also Crystal's project. Thank you, Crystal.
No, one for him. For some reason, it won't let me to start on the screen that I'm on. I have to look through the whole thing. Give it a few seconds. It should give you.
So this application is for 3044 Champa Street. The applicant is proposing to construct a new infill single-family residence with a garage ADU on an existing vacant lot in the Curtis Park Historic District. The lot is part of the Denver Housing Authority's redevelopment of the Platte Valley Homes and is outlined in red on the left of the Development along this block of Champa Street will have a consistent setback of 20 feet as shown on the site plan. Both 3052 and 3042 Champa Street on either side of this property also have that 20-foot setback that has already been approved by the council. For you. Okay. So at the top of the screen is the streetscape comparison for the whole block, showing the proposed infill structure with blocks around it near the center. The new proposed house is a combination of the Queen Anne and Italianate styles and will be approximately 30 feet tall, which is a height consistent with other houses on this block. At the bottom is a closer view of the proposed structure next to adjacent approved design. Staff does have concerns over the proposed infill structure's width at 27 feet, 63 inches, 27.53 feet wide, as it's not consistent with other house widths on the block or in the surrounding context, meaning it's not meeting design guideline 4.1. However, the lot is wider than other lots on the block, except for the one lot adjacent to the right at 3042 Champa, which is the one it is similar to. So the proposed footprint also is slightly larger than 3042 Champa Street. So it may not be compatible with the district or historic lot coverage patterns. So here's the compatibility demonstration showing other Queen Anne styles in the district that the proposed design is partially based off of for this new structure. Of these houses, only one at 3000 South Street is larger than the applicant's proposed 27.53 feet width. Additionally, the examples shown with masonry front porches at 2720 South, 3144 South, and 2619 Champa Street all appear to be examples that have been altered over time and were likely not original to these structures. The porch proportions on the proposed new infill structure are not typical of Queen Anne or the Italianate styles in the district. Porches on Queen Anne style structures are typically less heavy and do not typically have masonry columns or walls. Therefore, staff believes the proposed front porch structure does not meet design guidelines 4.3B or 4.16. So here on the left, you can see the proposed structure design. Design guideline 4.4 states to design the height, mass, and form of a new building to be compatible with the historic context. The building form, a combination of Queen Anne and Italianate, as well as the width, is not characteristic of the district. Their overall width is larger than all other examples provided. Additionally, this combination of the two styles of Queen Anne and Italianate is not something that's seen anywhere in the district and does not fit with the surrounding historic context. So here's the front and rear elevation of the proposed structure. Design guideline 4.5 states to design a new building to be recognized as current construction while respecting key features of the historic district, as well as the surrounding context of law. The proposed design will be recognized as current construction, as it is a combination of the Queen Anne and Italianate styles, which is not something that is seen in the district. However, the combination of styles is not a simplified interpretation of historic design within Curtis Park, but a more complex design. The design is not compatible with mapping or forms found in the district and stands out since it is a combination of these two styles, Queen Anne and Italianate, and is not neutral. The house includes typical features like a front porch. However, the flat roof and masonry design of this front porch is not typical of either the Queen Anne or Italianate style that's used in the massing. And so combining it as a third element to this design, which is more contemporary, creating an overall design that has three different combined styles. Here's side elevations of the structure, which also show the proposed roof form. Design guideline 4.6 states to use a roof form that is compatible with the historic context. The proposed structure will have a combined front gable and flat roof form with a center tower that is not historically found within the district. Additionally, design guideline 4.17 states to ensure that decks are compatible with the surrounding historic context. Staff has concerns with the 2 rooftop decks proposed at the front and rear of the structure. The first one behind that parapet of the Italianate portion of the structure, and the second one behind that center tower access to the 3rd floor. The rooftop deck will cover a large area of the roof and begins at the front facade parapet wall. The roof deck may be visible from the street, so it is screened by the parapet wall, and the second rear roof deck is not oriented away from neighbors' yards. So here's the garage ADU design. It is in the typical location for garages in this district and will be accessed off an alley to the rear of the property, following historic patterns. The 2-story flat roof structure is subordinate to the primary structure and does not height. So these are the perspective views provided by the applicant. The proposed infill structure's overall mass and width and form is not characteristic of the district and does not match historic proportions. Therefore, staff is recommending denial at this time.
So, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff? No? Okay, great. Thanks, Crystal. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant?
We're both here, and the actual homeowners are online, and I think it'd be great if they could get started.
What's their name?
Caroline and Chris. Very excited.
Great, thank you.
I have a business here. Everybody can use this. So,
Hi, guys.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Chris. Hi. Hi, thank you for joining us. As applicants, I guess the 4 of you will have 10 minutes to speak. And as you start, why don't you please give us your name and address for the record, please, all 4 of you. And go ahead.
Great, we can start. Hi, my name is Caroline Cochran.
And I'm Caroline's husband, Chris Cochran.
And we currently live at 626 Alcatraz Avenue in Oakland, California. But we're looking forward to moving to Denver when our house is completed. We're grateful for your time and your thoughtful engagement today. I actually have a long family history in Denver, dating back to my great-great-grandmother, and my mom grew up not far from Curtis Park. We also appreciate your process, as I'm actually in the field myself. I have 2 master's degrees in architecture and urban design from Notre Dame, and I've worked for about 7 years, especially in firms that appreciate traditional architecture and inventiveness within the traditional vocabulary, like Robert Stern in New York. Now I'm an associate at Opticos Design in Berkeley, where I focus mostly on urban design and planning projects at the neighborhood scale. But Chris and I chose very intentionally to work with Alvarez Morris because we love the way that they synthesize traditional and modern design in their homes. So we aspire to create a home that doesn't kind of blindly copy historical styles, but instead really thoughtfully responds to the neighborhood context of Curtis Park to create something that's timeless. So thanks again for your time. And Carlos and Jason will turn it over to you.
Carolyn. Thank you, Carolyn. Hello, my name is Jason Fennell from Alvarez Morris Architectural Studio. We're located at 121 Adams Street in Denver, Colorado, 80206. Personally, I want to thank them, Landmark and the Curtis Park neighbors for providing what you've come thus far. As we first began this project, we looked towards the Denver Landmark Guidelines and decided to take the approach of using a contemporary design that's compatible with historic sightings, massing, and forms found in the district, rather than using simplified interpretations of historic designs. Thus, we have designed a structure that will be recognizable as new construction while still maintaining character and proportion of forms commonly found in Curtis Park historic. I'll start off by speaking to a few of the Landmark staff comments and concerns outlined in the brief provided. In the brief, staff suggests that the proposed infill structure width is not consistent with other house widths on the lot or in the surrounding context. However, the proposed width is identical to the adjacent lot at 3042 132 Champa Street. The larger site footprint is not perceived from the public as viewed from the street front. Furthermore, many of the examples included within the application have a similar overall site width within 1 to 2 feet or even a larger site width. 2814 Champa Street, 27.4 South Street, 3000 South Street, 3303 Curtis Street, 916 29th Street, 717 31st Street are all the houses that have fairly similar widths, if not larger overall site widths. Staff has also stated that the building, a combination of Queen Anne and Italianate, as well as the width, is not characteristic of the district. You mentioned the overall width is larger than almost all other examples provided by the applicant. We found this comment to be fairly misleading, as the previous safety examples have similar, if not greater, overall widths. GLM 200C in our application presents a diagram along the infill block of Champa Street, which shows similar proportions throughout the entire block. Additionally, we also reiterate that we are not proposing a combination of styles. Instead, we're utilizing a contemporary design which includes proportions commonly found throughout the district. Both a gable roof and a flat roof are typical historic forms found on their own in the neighborhood, and our contemporary design is proposing the same level. For the landmark design guidelines for new buildings, the guidelines do not promote specific architectural style or styles to be used for new construction in the historic district. Yet we found ourselves Yet Curtis Park neighbors and landmark staff consistently urge us to decide between a Queen Anne or Italian, when in fact we were never trying to specifically design for either style. We feel that the staff has taken a narrow approach to our project by prioritizing the guideline of using simplified versions of historic design rather than considering an alternative of a contemporary design that does not fit within the category of Queen Anne or Italian. Staff has also suggested that our porch proportions are not typical of the Queen Anne or Italian style. We are willing to adjust our porch design to better fit within the district and propose alternatives that include detailed wood columns and a metal railing in place of the masonry walls. However, we want to emphasize our initial porch design does not meant to be the Queen Anne or Italian. Staff's comments have urged us to choose a specific porch style instead of considering a contemporary interpretation. Thank you. I'll pass it on to Carlos.
Thanks, Jason. My name is Carlos Alvarez, architect at Alvarez Morris at 121 Adams Street. We have been doing work in historic neighborhoods for the last 20 years, and we have always had an ongoing discussion with the board about what is the right approach to take in these historic neighborhoods. What is it with working with the historic homes, and what is it with working in the historic neighborhood under new construction? As we're getting older, we have also seen landmark teams come and go. These teams have had very different answers to the questions that we bring up. And I have to admit, I'm struggling with the current team, as I feel they're guiding us in a very narrow path. For the first time, we also find ourselves in the Curtis Park Historic District. Let's just say it has been a very interesting and learning experience. Very early in the process, we proactively wanted to get feedback. Well, it did not go well with them. We kind of regrouped and talked about what was said and what we improved. We mostly made changes that we were guided to do by changing all of the windows in our design. I would actually like to respond. I don't know, they brought the letter from the neighborhood, the application, but they also recommend denial based on the Italianate and Queen Anne forums. But I want to answer specifically to both the neighborhood committee and staff. First, the neighborhood committee mentions the forum is not found in the Curtis Park Historic District. I would not disagree more. As a matter of fact, the exact forum is all over their neighborhood, just not copied identically. We have a graphic here that I was pretty sure somehow it would not be shown on our presentation. Our presentation had like 10 more sheets that somehow are not there.
They have them.
What's that?
They have your application. We only present some.
I'm a little bit confused by, again, this comments of like, it's not represented on this, on this street. We're showing you that the massing that we currently have matches like, 2/3 of the properties within the approved area. Second, the applicant is combining two distinct styles into one form. Again, we could not disagree more. We have been very clear from the beginning that we are not emulating any specific architectural style. There's the design guidelines for Denver landmark structures and districts. They do not promote a specific architectural style or styles to be used, but it should be recognizable as new construction while respecting the surrounding district. That is what we have done. We have used the shapes and forms within the district, not emulating any particular style. We believe we followed all of their suggestions, we would have ended up with something that would not differentiate new from old. Third, the house is wider than a typical 25-foot lot. Here we have to agree, and they are correct. And the reason we are not a typical 25-foot lot is because we're a 37-foot lot. With that said, the reason for the two different volumes, A and B, represented on our graphic over here, is in our design, is to scale down the proportion of smaller volume and a larger volume. Volume with the pitched roof would emulate all of the other houses that are in the 25-foot lots. So again, we're really conscious of scale issues. In regards to the staff report, a couple of similar comments. On 4.1, proposed infill structural width is not consistent with other widths of the block. I'm not going to read what I have here because it's pretty upsetting, but it's a very misguided comment and quite upsetting. The approved house next door is identical. Identical. I'll say it 5 times. Identical. In width and in shape. We actually copied it on day one because we thought it was a very clever way of bringing down the scale. So again, do not appreciate the idea of saying like it's wider than anything approved. Again, 4.4, we are not referencing styles, and the width is identical to the next door. Every single comment is referencing styles and width. Styles and width. Quite confused, honestly. Again, we are not representing styles. We have 2 volumes, a gable roof that matches in form and scale all over the neighborhood. The flat one that helps scale down and reference other styles. In regards to the front porch, I believe we will be okay changing this, but we're really afraid that making this change would again slowly get us close to their Queen Anne interpretation of house. In conclusion, I want you to know that we have studied all of the comments they have made, both staff and neighborhood, and concluded that
Your 10 minutes is up. Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I do. And I can't roll to this page of your application, but it's right past the sheet past LM 200B that looks at the roof massing studies. Wonder if you could talk a little bit about those and the process and decision-making around that?
Yes. I believe this sheet over here, right?
I believe mine has, yes, it has elevations on the left and perspectives on the right.
So in evaluating all of the staff comments and the neighborhood comments, again, honestly, I think their obsession with Queen Anne is overwhelming to us because the more study that I did about the Queen Anne representation in Curtis Park was actually pretty bad. They're basically saying it's eclectic in nature, it's never developed far enough. Most of the people that did it were kind of winning it, they were architects at the time. So again, the fact that we're like cornered into trying to emulate this style that so to be honest, was difficult. But anyway, all of these studies were just representing their ideas for us to involve. And every single time we went with this Queen Anne's, and we have very specific comments from them, who would be like, hey, use a combination of the gable roof and the head roof, which is that second one from the left on the top. And honestly, the proportion of the whole thing got even wider, right? So it's like in one side we're getting criticized because our house is wider, but the comments that what they're asking us to do would actually make the house appear wider. So that's what these studies were doing. What we were doing with this, again, and I'm super careful here, it's almost too close to the styles for my comfort. I wish it was even more different, but because of the windows and some of the changes that we've made. But I think what was successful in this design of the wider lot was the idea that we're using the pitch roof, flat roof, to bring the scale down and actually to wink a little bit at the property next to us, which is a modern box house. I would not call it Italian, because it's not. And the proportions are very similar. So we're picking up the flat area of that house, the gabled area, of pretty much all the other houses within the street.
As I look at that analysis, it's sort of presents as one of these is not like the other. It's the one you arrived at, which has the flat roof and then the third floor program outside. And so was there any study given to creating that program through different means of massing that may be in better keeping with the guidelines?
Are you talking about that third floor?
Yeah, if that's a program element, it's essential to your client and design.
Essential, I would let ownership speak to that. It's just a cool space out there that you can arrive to, and then the stairs act as a light well to bring the light internally throughout the house. Again, I'm so always very concerned, and you know, you've heard me say this before. I'm so concerned about, like, you know, you don't find this in the neighborhood. It's like, great.
Yeah, I'm just, but my specific question is, did you study other roofing forms to accommodate that program? That's, because that is the element that isn't in all the other elevations that speak to different roof forms.
I understand. It's a good point. Again, my approach is, again, clients, a little bit of the pushback was actually to be more dramatic and have all of that as perfect glass box, no molding whatsoever, even more European approach and bringing it down a little bit. It's just a matter of, you know, how do we get there? The only answer I have to that is we pushed it far back enough. That's from a perspective. We look at it just correct from the front street and kind of disappears. So some of this perspectives that you're seeing are not doing us any favors because we're not flying with this, but when you're on the street, you know, street as well. Again, I think, and you're making a very good point, right? If I was on your seat, I'm looking at that, it was jumping at me as well. I think it's because we're trying to bring all of these proportional windows by and proportions or the Italianate on that glass volume. It's actually brought the attention to us as opposed to what I was hoping to do, which is that it would go away. But that's, you know, when I'm looking at that, that's what I react to. It's like, yeah, that's a lot. Right. So.
Larry.
Yeah, I have a question. I guess it's probably more for the owners. The staff's concern about the rear portion of the roof deck potentially being oriented to look into neighbors' yards. Is that something that you specifically are wanting, needing, or is that something you're open to not having?
Yeah, I think in general, part of the ideal for privacy was the half walls that would both shield us from neighbors and shield neighbors from us. In general, the roof deck is a modern amenity that we think is really desirable, and especially with the kind of sun that that side of the house will receive, as well as the views to downtown. So that's kind of a rationale for that, as well as that third floor is a creative space. It's both an art studio for Caroline and a workspace for me, and really feel like those roof decks are additive to that creativity and access to nature.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question. Sure. Are you thinking about asking for an administrative adjustment in the bulk?
I think we're probably going to have to on that volume that we were referring to. Yeah. There was another comment made.
No, I'm sorry, but just to finish that up. So you recognize that there's a bulk violation.
Correct.
Asking for an administrative adjustment for that.
Thank you. Other questions? Yeah. No? All right. Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. The owners joining us. Are there any public comments? Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Taylor, any public comments, anybody? Keith?
Yes.
Can you hear us?
Hi. Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, Curtis Park Design Review Chair. Thank you guys for your time today. This is why we have a landmark district, is because there are a lot of different variations, but we do expect new infill to actually respect and respond to that. We do not have this form anywhere in the district. We do have combinations and things that draw upon both Queen Anne and Italianate, and they do it very synthesized. This does not. Crystal did a great job with the staff report. There is more comments in our letter that we sent. The big issues are obviously the roof form. This roof form of having two is obviously driven by their desire to have a front and back rooftop deck, something that this commission has not approved ever. You have approved rooftop decks. You've not approved this large of a third-story room. You've also approved a lot of modern porches, but not something that is clearly a bungalow porch. We don't have bungalow porches in Curtis Park as a part of our historic district. We have Queen Anne porches, we have Italianate porches. We do not have something that's out of the significance of our time, which is a bungalow porch. And this is, again, adding an additional element and mixing styles of one which does not even exist in Curtis Park. So roof form is critical. It is a guideline. Front porch is critical. It is a guideline. Combination of multiple styles is not appropriate for our district. And there are lots of options to go with a hipped roof, a gabled roof, a recessed gabled roof, all of which have been found on this new infill block that you guys have diligently worked on. And these have all looked of their times. You've done modern, you've done traditional, and I think you've done a great job on making this block look unique and of its time. This project does not and needs to.
Thanks, Keith. Appreciate your comment. Are there any other public comments, Taylor?
No hands raised.
No hands raised? All right. Okay.
Oh, wait, there's one, sorry. Just popped
There's
in.
one?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Hello?
Yes, hi.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Comments, please? Yes, we can hear you. And you have 2 minutes to make your comment. Please give us your name and address first.
My name is Ashley Albright. I live in Curtis Park, 818 32nd Street. I completely agree with Keith Pryor. The presentation architect that has been presented is not cohesive in any way to the community, and it should be. I mean, presenting a visual with some forward-looking modifications is one thing. Glamping together two different styles to accomplish the owner's and architect's goal is not in alignment with the guidelines or the houses in our community. So I completely support Keith Pryor and object to the presentation that's been made by the owners and the architects. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments, Taylor? No?
I don't see any.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff, or staff, do you have any redress for the? All righty, then we will go into deliberation at this point. Commissioners, how do you think this does?
Let's start on this.
You certainly can.
Yeah, to me, I looked at this and I couldn't quite see what all of the issues were, but let me start. The lot size is what the lot size is. The lot size is bigger than the other lot sizes. That's not an issue that is really within our purview. That's the lot size that the owner has. Second part has to do with the bulk claim violation, because I believe bulk claim violation points up the issue with that tower. And I would be inclined to say that I would support a bulk claim violation, and that maybe the architect would have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to get that piece up there, but keep it within the bulk claim. I think that would solve the main issue. And I don't understand actually why people call this two styles. there are many houses, I mean, just because there's a flat piece there, doesn't mean it's Italian. So it's funny, I looked at that and I couldn't quite understand why it was being denied, although I will say again, I would not support a bulk plane, zoning. I mean, I wouldn't support an administrative, adjustment. I think the porch is an interpretation of the porch.
Yeah. Excuse me, I'll jump in. I think that roof decks and the applicant said it's a modern amenity, and I thought that was appropriate because it really, I mean, there are porches and there are, all kinds of historic exterior spaces that we see. But I think the roof deck piece, especially for this block of Curtis Park, has kind of been a unique challenge on several projects. And we looked at other cases where big side gables or shed dormers, or, different orientations to be able to allow that upper story access blended nicely with a typical form. Again, talking forms as opposed to style, but a gable form, not a queen anne, not a bungalow, whatever that might be. And I do think that there are a lot of really nice elements here. I think as it goes for different studies and renderings, and this is an incredible amount of work that's been put into looking at this, and that's clear, so I appreciate that very much from the applicants. And I think, and to your point, we talked a lot about, and especially on this block, I think almost every project has had a front setback variance. We've had a lot of overheight or tall gables, which are typical of that late 19th century. But making the exception specifically for a form that is not particularly historic where it's being used is a challenge. And so I would agree, I don't disagree on many levels here, but it does feel like, that the roof porch or the roof deck and access and how that interacts with the facade, either primary or secondary, to the point of guideline, I'm going to get the guideline. Guideline 4.18, I think it is talking about decks and privacy. Nope, sorry. Further back up. 4.17, the neighboring structure that we approved actually has a pretty strong north rack, and this deck is in front of that. So I think if you're looking at mostly a brick wall there, I don't know that that's a privacy issue, perhaps. Just to speak to that comment, guideline 417. But I guess I would say that I generally agree that a roof deck on a historic form, whatever that style may be, is a challenge, especially when there's a bulk plan violation. So I'm curious to hear what others think about that. And I do think maybe the final thought with respect to the front porch, we use the term bungalowized sometimes, right? Which was maybe not historically accurate to the original construction. It is absolutely common in many Denver neighborhoods on cottages, that were built in bungalow period as much as it might have been Queen Anne or something else as well. I'll agree to disagree on a few, but I think there's a lot of good here. I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, I think Anne's comments really summarized my thoughts. For the most part, I agree that the width of the lot is really driving this, and I actually appreciate that the architects did what they did to both kind of reduce the appearance of its scale and also to relate it to the house immediately next door. And yeah, the porch question, I think there are good arguments for saying that nothing else on the block or originally in the district would have had large masonry posts, but we've also approved flat roof porches, so I'm not actually concerned about that component of it. I would agree that I think the rationale behind us, behind the commission doing variances for bulk plane is to help the building be more compatible with the context, and this particular reason for breaking the bulk plane doesn't seem to do that in my opinion. So I don't think it meets the guidelines.
Can't say anything, right?
Correct.
So hard.
I can only imagine. Nick, you had questions about Spartina.
Well, yeah, I also agree with most, if not all, of Anne's comments. And I agree the cross between styles and the labels aren't necessarily relevant. In the porch, again, but the massing and the bulk plane are, my main issues. But as the newest member of the commission, I'm going to defer to my colleagues as to how best to approach that.
Well, I mean, I think I'm on the same page as Dan, that it's a lot and a half wide, and the building is wider in response to the wider lot, the same way as the narrower buildings respond to the narrow lots. And it is adjacent to a similar configuration. My objection really had to do with the way that third floor was expressed, both in terms of massing and detail. And so I don't think we can come up with a set of conditions
Right.
that would allow approval. But generally, I don't have a problem with the way the front porch is expressed. Particularly because the building is different because it's wider. I don't have a problem with the stylistic expression. It's the way the third floor is both massed and detailed that is the primary problem. And I would not support a administrative adjustment to allow for that kind of encroachment.
All right, Erica?
I would just be repeating what others have said.
Okay, so it sounds like, so Gary, to your point, it sounds like you are supporting a denial. So that it's a lot cleaner for the applicants. I will make that clear. It's a lot easier to go back and take our comments and revisit designs rather than us coming up with a laundry list of conditions that are very hard to meet. All right. Are there any other thoughts, commissioners, that you'd like to make so that the applicants?
I mean, maybe just to reemphasize that in spite of frustrations that have been expressed and a lot of things talked about, that there's still a lot of good going on. It really is.
Thank you, Grant.
It's mixing our purview with full plane and the true context of the piece that we talked about.
Great, thank
And I
you.
suppose our motion should probably delete any of the sections that it seems like having intention around.
I think that's correct. Does that mean that you're thinking about making said motions? Sorry.
Am I? Okay.
What happens when we-
Well, why don't we go through them one by one?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
So 4.1 is the first one.
Yep.
That seems like not. There weren't any issues.
Right.
Other issues.
So we're striking 4.1.
Yeah.
4.3 is next.
Okay, 4.3.
Typical features of native historic buildings.
It seems like striking that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay. Then it's 4.4. Design height, mass, and form, for the ability to be compatible with historic.
I think that's where keeping.
I think you're correct. 4.5, design new building to be recognized as current construction.
That can be struck.
I agree, yeah.
4.6, use a roof form that is compatible with the historic district.
I think that's the basis.
Yeah, I think you're right. Okay. All right. 4.16 is next.
Porch, yeah.
Porch.
Right.
Okay. 4.17.
I guess that's a question for the other commissioners. Is there any concern over the provision of the decks, or is it purely just the?
There's a lot of things in this one.
Well, I think, but it's overall, the intent is saying ensure that they are compatible.
Right.
And I think that we do want to see that.
Yes.
So I think we should.
Right.
All right.
I'll give this a shot then.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move to deny application number 2023-COA-092 for the mass forming concepts of the proposed infrastructure at 3044 Champa Street, as per presented testimony, submitted documentation, guidelines 4.4, 4.6, and 4.17. Curtis Park, character defining features, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Larry, thank you. Do I hear a second? And has seconded that. Then commissioners, let's vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Abstain? All right, the denial passes unanimously. The applicant can take our suggestions and come back.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I have a quick logistical question. So if I read correctly, the motion here, is we correct the bulk violation that not so detailed or that doesn't break to that? That should be what we do here.
We should just look at the design guidelines they decided that they have concerns about, so we can discuss that later.
I'm gonna have to question that. Design guidelines.
So you'll have to work with Crystal later, Carlos.
Okay.
We have other items, sorry.
It's been frustrating. I have to
Sure.
All right, we are now moving on to 2023-ZUA-098 at 3361 West 31st Avenue, Allen and Ghost Main Street. And actually, commissioners, it's 3 o'clock. Sometimes we take breaks. Anybody like a break? Okay, all right. I'm sorry, Brittany.
No, it's okay.
We'll come back after a 5-minute break. Thanks. 1 second. Then, let's go ahead and start. Is that Claire's needs? See if you can control it, Brittany.
Thought I could,
The things are there.
okay. It just took a long time for it to.
All right, for everyone listening virtually, thank you for your patience. We are going to begin now. We've all joined back, and our next project is 2023-COA-098 at 3361 West 31st Avenue, Allen and Ghost District, and Brittany Rice is our staff person. Brittany.
So this is for a rear addition to a contributing structure in the Ghost Historic District. Here you can see the building site and footprint and aerial image. It is just at the northern boundary of the Allen and Ghost Historic District. And here you can see the front and rear of the home. This non-historic addition will be demolished to accommodate the new rear 2-story addition and portions of the rear roof slope and rear wall to accommodate the addition. So here is the proposed demolition plan. So you can see how much of the exterior wall and roof is proposed to be demolished to accommodate the addition. So the 6% of the exterior wall and 36% of the roof structure will be demolished to accommodate the new addition. So essentially, basically the rear hip of the roof and then 6% of the wall, which does include these openings here that you see, will be demolished to accommodate the addition, but no further demolition will occur. This is less than 40% demolition to the walls, roof, or combined square footage, so this does not require a public hearing. And additionally, staff felt that it had limited impact on the character of the home from the public right-of-way, particularly the in-wall gable on the front facade and classical columns that are called out in the designation for this district on this home specifically, in this style specifically. So we were comfortable with the demolition that is proposed. So here is the proposed floor plan. So minimal change to the front of the structure, but again, much of that roof at the rear is going to be demolished to accommodate it. A new ridge line will be created as to construct that addition, so it will be changing the roof form from a hitch roof to a gable roof form. But again, however, that is not visible from the public right away. And then you can just see the footprint for the addition here. The addition footprint is 17 feet by 22 feet, a little over 22 feet, and the proposed addition height is 24 feet 9 inches. So here is the proposed addition. So again, the ridge line of the new addition will tie in to the ridge line of the historic roof. It will be minimally lower, so the original roof does remain prominent. And the addition is inset on both sides of the historic structure, and it does feature a change in materials as recommended by our design guidelines. The proposed form is a nested gable kind of type form with a rear one-story porch, and then simple 1/1 double hung windows on the rear and sides, and then the addition will be clad in fiber cement siding with a 5-inch reveal. So in the past, we have required 4-inch reveal, but with our design guideline update, we changed that to 4 to 6 inches for siding reveal. So this is a 5-inch siding. So I did just want to point that out to the commission, as we have historically required 4-inch, but with our design guideline update, that is an appropriate profile. The staff does have one concern on this drawing. It does indicate that the windows will be casement, awning, and fixed windows. So the elevation drawings, as you can see here, are showing what appears more to be a double hung window in appearance. So if the windows are to have a false mullion, it should have substantial depth to replicate the appearance of a meeting rail, and it should be located on the interior and exterior of the glazing with a spacer bar in the middle to give that appearance of a double hung window. Or alternatively, the meeting rail can just be eliminated from the design, and it can be a simple one-light casement window, because we do feel that that helps differentiate addition as new. So we are recommending conditional approval with just for clarifications on that window form. If it is a casement with the meeting rail, or if it's just, if the applicant would prefer just a casement with no meeting rail, because if they were doing this to satisfy a condition on our part, it wouldn't necessarily be a condition for us to make it appear to be a double window. So conditional approval on this proposed rear addition.
All right. Brittany, commissioners, do you have any questions for Seth? No? Good.
I just have one quick question on the demo plans and elevations. It doesn't really show the addition that's to be removed. Is that an issue for you?
It's not an issue. I mean, they would need to show it in their permit set, but typically when we're talking about demolition, we're more concerned with the demolition calculations for the contributing elements. So while it's not shown, and it would change the demolition figures overall, we wouldn't calculate it as part of our 40% to trigger the public hearing, because that's only for the historic fabric.
Okay. Any other questions for Brittany? Doesn't look like it, Brittany. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have our applicants? Okay, let's be virtual. I have to look. It's just kind of awkward to have the audience behind me. All right.
They've been added, they can unmute, turn their camera on whenever they're ready.
Okay, great. The applicant, there you are. Hi, you'll have 2 minutes to talk to us about your project, and please begin with your name and address for our records. Thank you.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
We can, thank you.
Hi, thanks for having us today and allowing us to present a bit, and for addressing this request that we have. My name is Brian Kurzel. I live at 3361 West 31st Avenue in Denver, in the Allen M. Ghost Historic District. My wife, Sasha Gubser, is finishing her shift at Denver Health, so she's not able to join today, but I'll be representing our family along with my colleague, Ginger Bim, who I hope is here. She's our architect that we're working with on this project. I'll start by saying my wife and I, Sasha and I, bought this house in August of 2006. So we've lived here for about 17 years. Before it was the Ghost, before the Ghost Historic District was actually established. And we have raised our family here. We have well, they're not young anymore. We have 2 kids that have been born in this house and they want to stay in this house. My daughter's now a freshman at North High School and my son is at Sandoval Elementary. And we, rather than be forced to, as our kids are getting bigger, to move out of this neighborhood, we have an interest in expanding our indoor space while making sure to really be cognizant and respectful of the character of this neighborhood that we appreciate so much. So that's why we have chosen to work with Ginger as our architect, who's done a variety of projects on houses that are similar to ours and that that are in this neighborhood. So we've been very excited to work with Ginger to try to figure out a way to do this. I'm actually sitting in the back spot. This is the actual original brick, and I'm sitting in that spot that is going to be demolished and replaced. And we've been excited to work with Ginger and also with the staff at the Landmark Commission to figure out a way to do this in a way that is really respectful of the neighborhood and of the Landmark Commission. With that, I'll hand it over to Ginger, and I'm happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Brian.
Can you guys hear me?
We can. Can you please give us your name and address?
Yes, I am Ginger Bim. I live right down the street from this project, 3547 West Lowell. I'm sorry, West 23rd. Sorry, corner of 23rd and Lowell. So our intent with this was to follow all of the guidelines and rules. It was kind of tricky because the existing roof structure is shady, and having the hip on the back makes it very hard to connect to the new addition. And that is why we ended up demolishing more of the roof than I planned on doing. But we've worked with a structural engineer to figure out how to solve some of the problems in the existing roof and add on to the house in a way that keeps the addition secondary to the house by dropping the roof line and figuring out how to not change too much of the existing floor plan. Structurally, we needed to add a couple of columns and support the new roof line ridge. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job of accomplishing what the Landmark Commission would want. I hear your comments on the windows. We're very happy to change all of them to casement if that's with no bar. I really did think that was just a requirement to make them look like double hung. So that was a misunderstanding on my part, I guess. So I don't think the windows are a big deal in this. And other than that, we're just trying to figure out a effective way to keep this family in the neighborhood and add on to their house in a way that allows them to live here for a longer period of time and have something that satisfies the Landmark Commission's desires and also the owner's desire to be sympathetic to the neighborhood and the historic district.
Okay, great. Ginger, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant?
I'd like to ask a question about the windows.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit the thinking behind having casement rather than one?
So we have to have casement windows on the second floor for egress requirements. And I don't like putting one big ugly egress casement window surrounded by double hungs because they don't ever look, even if you put a false mullion in, they don't look like they go together. So I put the false mullion in thinking you guys were requiring it, but we have to do casements for egress requirements by building code. And the sill height can't be below 24 inches, so it causes sort of a domino effect of issues with the building code.
Thank you. All right.
I have a question about the roof plan. It looks like the slope of the eastern section of the roof is actually slightly lower, slightly less steep than on the
and that
addition.
is because, so we really couldn't keep that. You guys want to pull it up first before I start talking about it? If you do the floor plans, that's on the floor plans. Yeah. So yes, there is a slightly different slope on one side of the roof than the other, and it's because of the existing kitchen and the existing walls that we're trying not to remove in the existing structure on the first floor. So if you look at the basement, there's a column just to the left of the load-bearing wall in the basement. And weirdly, well, not weirdly, common for historic structures, the load-bearing wall on the first floor is not stacked over the load-bearing wall in the basement. We're trying not to do kitchen demolition and put a column right in the center of their counter on the first floor. So structurally, we had to shift the new ridge over just a few inches over from where the existing ridge was. And this allows everything to be built and not affect the existing roof line from the front, and it allows everything to be lower than the existing roof line from the front so that it's not visible from anywhere. But that's part of why we did the double gable on the back so that you really can't see anywhere that the two roof lines are slightly different angles.
Okay, great. Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was purely for the sake of having the addition roof be slightly lower, but it sounds like there's some other very good.
No, it was because of, it was combination of things. It was the existing structure and trying not to disturb the existing house because they really want to just keep the existing house the way that it is without adding giant columns in the middle of the kitchen. So that was part of it. But yes, it was also to keep it below. It also serves the purpose of keeping it below the existing. So it seemed like it was a win-win.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners? Okay, great. Applicants, you've done your job, and thank you very much for joining us. Do we have any public comments? Anyone? Nobody here is online that wishes to comment on this. All right. Okay, Brittany, did you have anything additional? All right, then we will go into deliberation, Commissioners. What do you think of this? And, you know, in regards to our guidelines, does it meet, not meet?
I have a question about the roof. I'll just jump in.
Go for it, Larry. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it meets the guidelines. I think the roof thing seems a little bit funky to me, but I totally get the logic behind it, and it really won't be visible from the rear. Not that that's in our purview, but yeah. I would support it with also, yeah, I think removing the center bars. I agree with that on that.
Yeah, that's great. Any other comments, Commissioners? Well, then, anyone wish to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
And thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application number 2023-COA-098 for the rear addition and skylights at 3361.
Skylights? There are skylights on the historic roof at the rear. Sorry, I didn't think about that.
Should we discuss this? Okay, got it. Skylights at 3361 West 31st Avenue as per design guidelines 2.28, 3.1, 3.3, 3.3 to 3.10, 5.18 character defining features for the Allen M. Ghost Historic District. Presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the condition the details are provided on the false mullion design in the section, or the windows are revised to a single light casement design.
Second. And Graham has seconded. Thanks, Ann and Graham. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Abstain? All right, it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And we are on to our next and final design review project. It is 2023-COA-071 at 2841 Perry Street. I'm sorry, 112 Woodbury House. And Brittany is again our staff person.
So this is for
a garage and dormer additions to an individual landmark at 2841 Perry Street. It is the property you see outlined in white here, but there is also another individual landmark to the north of this property. These structures were designated together collectively, but this house dates to 1895 and is the Woodbury House. So here you can see the front of the property and then also the rear of the property, which has a non-historic garage that will be demolished to accommodate the new garage structure, which will be placed in a very similar location to this garage. And then at the rear of the home, you can see a non-historic addition. There will be no changes to that addition. So here is the existing site plan on the left, and here is the proposed site plan on the right. So again, that garage structure that is there will be demolished, and forward of that garage is the existing pergola structure. The applicant is proposing to keep a pergola forward of the garage. However, it's not the same pergola, but kind of similar configuration in terms of what you're seeing conceptually with the site plan and placement of structures on the site. The new garage does have a small shed roof that is that will have metal roofing on top of it, and that is here. Oh, this is not showing, guys. So between the garage structure and the new pergola structure, there's the shed roof structure here. That just provides coverage between the garage and the current house structure. So staff generally are supportive of this structure. We did have some concerns over the placement in terms of relationship to the house and zoning. However, the applicant has assured me that these are allowed, but if they're not, zoning will look at that closely in terms of placement on the site. So the applicant has indicated that that's appropriate. So here is the demolition plan. The applicant is also proposing to construct new dormers on the historic roof structure. So a new dormer on the north slope and expanding a dormer on the south roof slope. So these will be clad in different materials, which I will show you in elevation here in a second. But essentially it will be a totally new dormer on the north slope and then expansion of this dormer here on the south roof. So here is the proposed site plan. So the new garage will have dormers on it as well. This is to provide light into a loft space that is proposed for the garage. The garage does meet zoning requirements in terms of footprint and height. So staff did not have concerns over that, and it is just a loft space if you look at it in floor plan. And then here is that metal roof breezeway structure that I was talking about, and that pergola structure that is forward of the primary structure. So the dormers are located behind the cross gable and will not be visible from the public right away, so it's best to look at them in elevation. So the dormer on the south roof slope is proposed to be clad in a vertical lap siding, and the dormer on the north roof slope is proposed to be clad in a cedar shingle. Actually, I think it's a round shingle. Let me check my notes. But the dormer on the south slope is proposed to be clad in this material because it matches the existing cladding material for that expansion. And the dormer on the north slope is a totally new dormer. Staff do have some concerns over the variety of materials that are proposed here for this addition. However, these dormers are not really visible from the public right away. So I didn't make note of it in my staff report. But more specifically, I have some concerns over the profile that is proposed for the shingle. So it's noted as a 7-inch exposure. And again, we normally allow 4 to 6 inches now. The applicant states it is matching the exposure on the house, but the existing house doesn't have documentation indicating to me that it's that exposure. I'm not saying it doesn't, But again, the exposure may not match the existing house, and there are several different materials proposed. So we do have some concerns over that. Oh, sorry about that. The garage structure, as you can see here, is a gable roof structure with dormers. It is going to be a brick structure, and then it'll have straight edge shingle on the garage. And then the dormers on the garage are also going to have that vertical cladding material to match the existing. So again, just more material. So staff do have some concerns over the number of materials that are proposed. And let me see if I can figure out how to get rid of this line that I just drew crazily on here. Okay, I can't, so we'll just move on. So here is the front of the garage and that metal roof structure, and then you can see the dormers on the side. The dormers tie into the ridge line, again, allow light into that space that is shown. And here is the pergola structure that will be forward of that shed roof with the metal roofing. This is a wood pergola structure. So here is the side elevation. So the windows here and the dormers for the garage and the dormers on the historic house are just simple casement windows. Here you can see that shingle material that is proposed for the north dormer on the historic home, and then that vertical siding that is proposed for the dormers in the garage. And then here we have the south elevation. So again, that same condition with the dormers on the two dormers on the garage roof, and then that expansion of the dormer with that cladding material that matches the existing. So again, I do have some concerns over the number of materials and different exposures that we're seeing here. Also in window section, the windows are indicated to be inset 2 inches into the wall plane. However, the window section materials show a lap siding material, and the structure is proposed to be clad in shingles and vertical siding and brick. So there are some conflicting details in the sections and notes of the materials. The windows are also indicated to be aluminum clad wood. However, the submitted manufacturer specs indicate Fibrex window. So either of these materials may be used. However, it needs to be clearly indicated in plan because this is all new construction. And then finally, windows in elevation are shown as 1/1 encasements. So this is the 1/1 window here that is proposed, and then the rest of the dormers have casement windows with no lights. However, the submitted manufacturer specs indicate that they will have divided lights. So in order to keep the design simple, staff are recommending that it just be the 1/1 full light configurations that you're seeing elevation and not the materials, what you're seeing with the divided lights in the manufacturer specs. So we just have a few concerns over this addition, but generally speaking, we do feel that it is appropriate and are recommending conditional approval. And I do have the conditions listed out above the motion, but for some reason, they didn't make it into the motion. So just look above if you agree to those conditions. And that's all I have on this one.
Great, thanks. Commissioners, any questions?
Just wanted to clarify with the windows, fiberglass is appropriate because these are not original window openings.
Correct. So we don't allow fiber glass composites on historic openings. It gets a little confusing on the dormers on the historic house, but because that is technically a new addition, they are allowed to use the Fibrex there.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Brittany, thank you. All right, is our applicants ready to go? Okay. All right, is the applicant there?
Be able to unmute, turn on their camera.
You should be able to unmute and turn on your camera if you wish. Hello. There you are. Hi there. Hi. You've got 10 minutes to tell us the project. Please begin with your name and your address.
Okay, won't need 10 minutes, but thank you very much for the time today. My name is Robin Adams, and I'm at 1525 Raleigh Street, Suite 320. And yeah, here just to touch on some highlights. Brittany has run through, pretty much all the points of the project, so I don't think we need to rehash any of that necessarily, but for the house, we're looking for that simple dormer modification to expand the second floor area to provide additional livable area for primary bathroom and also to provide daylight in the laundry on the north side. And then reconfigure that existing bedroom of the non-historic addition in the back, kind of the unusual piece at the rear of the alley. So in terms of the materials, we definitely we're looking at those and our thought process, we have all those materials in terms of siding materials on the house, both the shake and the vertical currently, and we saw that as really a legitimate palette to work with. And so we are open, of course, to staff recommendations to make adjustments to those as appropriate, both in profile and application. But, in terms of logic, we were really kind of taking our cues from the house, both from the historic siding that was used, as well as the siding that was part of the more current edition. And so we felt like using that material, recognizing the fact that the changes we're making are also not part of the historic home. And I think that's about it for the house. But yeah, we're definitely open to clarifying the window type and spec to match the drawings. We apologize for the discrepancy there, but we can easily remedy that. In terms of the garage, really, we had three goals: provide the owners with a more functional garage, create an architectural character to enhance the property and actually the quality of the backyard environment overall. The other garage really left a lot to be desired for the nature of the property itself. And then ultimately provide a small loft space in the roof attic for a small home gym or office for the use of the owners. And so, the garage, again, borrowed from the building forms and elements of the existing house and complied with the zoning to create what I think is subordinate massing that complements the overall house. And that's really all I have. Any questions, please? Appreciate it. And thank you again for your time.
Of course. Commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicant? It doesn't look like you have any questions, so thank you very much for joining us. Is there, no, you're welcome. Doesn't look like there's anybody there that wants to make a public comment, but let's see. Anyone out there wish to make a public comment on this project? No hands raised. No hands raised. All right. Okay, staff, did you want to say anything additional?
Yeah, I didn't make a condition on the materials because as the applicant said, they do all appear on the house. And you can't see that north dormer, but all the other dormers are clad in that vertical siding. So I struggled with it a little bit, but I ultimately didn't make it a condition to change that material, but I do need clarity on that exposure if the commission is comfortable with that half round shingle, because it is 7 inches and it's on the gable faces of the garage as well.
Commissioners, do you have any questions? Okay, great. All right, then, commissioners, let's go into deliberation. Any thoughts about the project, how it meets the guidelines? Doesn't meet the guidelines? Any thoughts on?
I have a concern about the configuration of the roof at the garage and whether or not it meets guideline 4.19. Design a garage or accessory dwelling to be compatible with the subordinate to the primary structure. And then C is your simplified version of building components and details found in the surrounding historic context. And I think 4 dormers on top of this little tiny structure with 4 dormers and, the roof and everything just seems to me to be overly complicated and does not really meet guideline 4.19. But I'd be interested in what other commissioners think.
Other commissioners?
I had the same thought. And I'm trying to weigh it against the fact that it's at the very back of the lot and a very large house that is gonna obscure it. But yeah, I do disagree with your thought.
I mean, I think that because it's only one space, the forces that required this kind of complexity really aren't there. There's a loft, there's a garage. And for some reason, there are times when we understand that there's complexity because it's meeting a lot of different requirements, and this is not one.
And, or, I'm sorry, Erica?
Yeah, I agree. I had the same qualms about it. I don't necessarily think it would be mistaken for a historic carriage house, but I feel like it's evoking that without kind of any real reason, if you will. So I have.
Other commissioners, any thoughts?
So you're suggesting the elimination of the dormers, essentially?
You know, what's funny to me is dormers are an addition to a roof form to accommodate.
Right.
Had purpose, but in this particular case, the applicant chose a roof form and modified it before they actually did anything else. So I have to say, to me, it seems like the wrong roof form. If you needed to have 4 dormers in a space that small, then this was, the shed roof was not actually, was the way to go to begin with. And I sort of agree with her. It's at the back of the house, but I just look at 4.19 and I just don't think it means 4.19.
Brittany?
I hear you. So initially, this started out with a really large shed, flat roof shed on the south slope. So this change to 4 dormers was a recommendation from staff to kind of simplify the overall form, because we collectively have some major concerns over the asymmetry and what was proposed previously. Now, that is to say you don't have to totally accept our recommendation, but this definitely design element came from staff recommendation and not so much from the architect.
I guess the concern to me would be if we don't approve that, then that turns into a denial, right?
Yes. Yeah, the way the application is. She really needs something to connect to the form prescribed.
I agree with staff that it isn't, so that helps the group's efforts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I could get on board with there's a lot, kind of interior, not a corner, secondary structure. We got some competition with some other unique additions. I know that they're trying to kind of tie some continuity through. I don't think that it detracts from the context. It's a pretty high style building. It's an individual landmark.
Right. Correct.
It's a little different than maybe a few weeks ago we looked at a pop top with a very monumental garage that didn't seem to jive. This one's a subordinate height. So I think there are reasons to make the case, probably both ways, but in this case, I'd be comfortable making the case for and with staff's recommendation.
I hear it on board.
Yes.
Okay. Other thoughts about the rest of it's not just the garage. Other thoughts?
I do agree with Brittany's concerns about the materials, and I guess I understand where the applicant is coming from, but I think I would feel better if the north dormer had the same material as the other dormers, the vertical siding.
Vertical siding. What do the other commissioners think? Nodding. See a lot of nodding. You could create that condition if you wish.
What is the significance of the Woodbury? I mean, it's a bunch of Woodburys. And is this, why is it an individual landmark?
old houses are next to each
Right.
other. And it says that, this is a History Colorado write-up on actually the neighbor's house. But it was bought by a former ex-husband. I'll email the link. There's a history. I am curious also, Gary.
Yeah, I don't want to complicate things. I get a little nervous sometimes when an individual landmark starts to have a succession of modifications over time, that how important was preservation of the integrity of the house relative to the importance of the person living there.
Yeah, right.
You know, and when does that get watered down to a point where it doesn't matter anymore? But,
That's a fair point.
well, I'm sort of on board with the consensus here.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I agree with your concerns. I understand them. We've already got a non-historic addition that kind of, it creates a lot more problems than these dormers.
You're right.
So and I guess that's another reason why I feel like I would prefer to see the north dormer have the same siding as the addition and the south dormer, to just, again, make it distinguishable as something that's been added later.
We can add that as a condition.
To answer your question,
Brittany's got, which question, Brittany?
about the Woodbury's.
Okay.
I mean, it was designated with the one to the north, like they are collective designation and association with the Woodbury family of the Woodbury libraries. So, I mean, it's an old designation. It doesn't say a lot about this house in particular, so I didn't add a lot of context to the staff report on it because I didn't have a lot of context to add.
Well, it feels like commissioners kind of come to agreement. Is somebody willing to take a stab at the motion?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay. I move to conditionally approve application number 2023-COA-71 for the garage demolition and new garage construction and dormer additions at 2841 Perry Street as per guidelines 2.28, 3.6, 3.7, 4.8, 4.18 through 4.20. Character defining features for the Woodbury House, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the conditions that the north dormer cladding matches that of the south dormer with vertical siding. We still need the shingle cladding for the garage, correct? That's number one condition. Number two, shingle cladding material to have a 4-inch to 6-inch exposure or match the exposure of the historic shingle cladding material with documentation provided to verify the dimension. Number three, clarify the window material to be either aluminum clad wood, wood, or fiberglass composite. And four, window design and configuration to match designs shown in elevation.
Erica, thank you. Second?
Second.
Larry has seconded the motion. All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Abstentions? All right. It passes with those following conditions unanimously. We have one business item, and that is the election of chair and election of vice chair. I don't know how this goes, Brittany.
There's a slide.
There's a slide.
There's a slide.
So you treat discussion items kind of similar to design review items, and that you introduce it. You ask for public comment, 2 minutes, staff clarifications, etc.
Okay.
And then there's another slide, Jesse, for the election. But essentially, at the last meeting, you discussed electing Julie as chair and Erica as vice chair. Of course, you can have more discussions on that if you like. And I don't think anyone in the public is going to comment, but
Probably.
that's all I have for you. So discuss amongst yourselves and then make a motion.
Thank you for, so there are no people in the public wanting to comment on this particular business item.
Nobody's hands are up.
Nobody's hands are up to comment on the election of the offices. It is the only business item that we have. Okay.
And you can combine it into one motion if you want.
All right.
You don't have to do two separate ones.
All right.
Still feel good about that arrangement?
Certainly, if you feel good about it after today.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I would move to elect Julie as chair, and Eric as vice chair for the coming year.
All right, thank you, Graham. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I think Gary is coming.
Our muscles.
And, all right, then, let's take a vote. All in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Nay? Abstention? Okay. Y'all are stuck with Erica and I. Are there any other business items or discussion items? To go through order.
I had a quick question. This is truly a quick question. It's a big topic, but it's just a quick question of, there's been news items about the state considering passing a law about kind of overriding local zoning regulations. And I was curious if you all have been following that, and if at some point you think it's something that is worth bringing more to our attention officially to discuss, not that we have a say in it per se, but I don't even know how it impacts landmark versus, zoning versus landmark. So just kind of wanted to throw it out there. Like, it's in the back of my mind, like, what's going to happen?
And I can respond a little bit to that.
No, Gary can go first. I do have a response, though.
Oh, I thought you were talking about discussion items. Do we need to go over that process?
No.
Okay.
Historic Denver's Preservation Policy Subcommittee has been looking at that. And that committee has a number of different other folks involved. And while it's a concern, they believe that the Colorado Municipal League is going to take some significant objection to that law if passed, and that it'll probably end up in court because it really interferes with, I think it's called home rule, for places like City County Denver, Lakewood. I mean, that they have their own, they have a right to have their own regulation for zoning and so forth. So that's kind of but they're watching it because it might pass and then create a number of other things that might have to happen.
So it would have implications for us if it is passed. I can't say what those implications are because I am not familiar with the bill. But CPD leadership is looking at it. So that means Jen and Kara for our team. And then Sarah Schultzwater, who is our boss, and Laura Eldressier, who's our executive director. So we have people on the team looking at it and providing comments, but that's as much as I know. If you have questions, I will happily connect you with Sarah or Jen on that, because I can't really answer them. I just found out about it on Monday, in full honesty, but it would have implications for us.
Well, now that we're all depressed, Erica, thank you. Any other items or questions or anything for good in order? Doesn't look like it, so I will call the meeting closed, and it is 4:00. Straight up. So thank you, everyone.